In 1900, a Greek sponge diver descended 45 meters to the bottom of the sea. He found a shipwreck, and inside that shipwreck, corroded, encrusted, barely recognizable, was a lump of bronze and wood the size of a shoebox. Nobody knew what it was. For 50 years, it sat in a museum drawer, ignored, unlabeled, forgotten. Then someone looked closer. What they found inside that corroded lump was not supposed to exist. 37 interlocking bronze gears, hand-cut with a precision that wouldn't appear again in human history for another 14 centuries. A differential gear mechanism that engineers didn't reinvent until the 1600s. Astronomical calculations, accurate to within hours, tracking the sun, the moon, 5 planets visible to the naked eye, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, and the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. All of it, in a box, built 2,000 years ago. We call it the Antikythera Mechanism, and it is, without debate, without controversy, confirmed by every scientist who has ever studied it, the most sophisticated object that survived from the ancient world. And before this video is over, you will understand why its existence changes everything we think we know about the history of human intelligence. Everything. To understand why this object should not exist, you need to understand what the world looked like in 100 BC. Rome was still a republic. Julius Caesar was not yet born. The great library of Alexandria was still standing. This was a world of scrolls and sandals, of bronze swords and wooden ships. The most complex machines of the era were water wheels and catapults. And yet, somewhere in the ancient Mediterranean, a craftsman sat down and built a mechanical computer, a device that could predict the position of every visible celestial body decades into the future, with a single turn of a hand crank. One turn of a crank. Decades of astronomical predictions in 100 BC. The ship carrying the mechanism sank near the island of Antikythera, between Greece and Crete, around 60 BC. The wreck lay undisturbed for nearly 2,000 years beneath 45 meters of cold, dark water. When divers first recovered the fragments in 1900 and 1901, they brought up statues, coins, glassware, and jewelry from one of the richest ancient shipwrecks ever found. The corroded bronze lump was almost thrown back into the sea. An archaeologist noticed it only because of its unusual weight. The most important object in the history of technology, almost discarded as worthless debris. The fragments sat in the National Museum in Athens for 2 years before anyone examined them seriously. Then, in 1902, a Greek archaeologist named Valerios Stias noticed something extraordinary. A gear wheel, perfectly formed, ancient bronze, embedded in the corroded mass like a secret the ocean had kept for 2 millennia. Some dismissed it as a navigational instrument. One prominent historian insisted it was too complex to be ancient at all. The easier explanation was always that it couldn't be real. Now, here's where the story becomes something else entirely. Stay with me, because what researchers discovered in the last 20 years, using technology that Price could never have imagined, is far stranger than anyone expected. In 2005, a team of scientists brought the most powerful X-ray computed tomography scanner ever used on an archaeological object to the National Museum in Athens. They scanned every fragment at a resolution of 1/10 of a millimeter. For the first time in history, they could see inside the corroded bronze without destroying it. What they found stopped them cold. The front face showed 2 concentric rings, the Egyptian calendar on the outer ring, the Greek zodiac on the inner. A golden sphere representing the sun moved across the zodiac, tracking its annual journey through the constellations. A separate pointer tracked the moon, and a small sphere, half black, half silver, rotated to show the current lunar phase in real time. Every day, every month, every year, automatically, with one turn of the crank. The back of the mechanism was even more extraordinary. The upper back dial tracked the 19-year metonic cycle, the pattern by which solar and lunar calendars realign every 235 lunar months. A calculation so precise it is still used today to determine the date of Easter. The lower back dial used a 223-month Saros cycle to predict solar and lunar eclipses, not just when they would occur, but what type of eclipse and whether it would be visible from a given location. And hidden in the mechanism's structure, a mathematical trick recognized only in 2020, an epicyclic gear system that modeled the irregular orbit of the moon with an accuracy matching the calculations of Hipparchus himself. The moon's orbit is not a perfect circle. It speeds up and slows down. The ancient Greeks knew this, and they built a machine to model it. But the inscription changed everything. Hidden across the mechanism's surfaces, inscribed in letters just 1.2 millimeters tall, researchers found text, thousands of characters, an instruction manual. The manual didn't just explain how to operate the mechanism, it explained the cosmos. It described the planets, it named them, it described their movements through the zodiac. Someone 2,000 years ago wrote a guide to the universe and encoded it inside a machine that could show you exactly where every planet would be on any date you chose. Researchers have now identified references to all 5 planets visible to the naked eye: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, each with its own pointer, each tracking its own cycle, each calculated through a gear train of extraordinary precision. The full mechanism, when complete, had over 30 individual gear wheels. The smallest gears had teeth just 0.5 millimeter apart, cut by hand, in bronze, 2,000 years ago. Now, here's the question that no one can answer. This mechanism did not come from nothing. The sophistication of its engineering, the depth of its astronomical knowledge, the precision of its manufacture, none of this was a first attempt. To build something this refined, there had to be earlier versions, simpler devices, failed experiments, generations of accumulated knowledge passed from master to apprentice in workshops that no longer exist. An entire industry of precision engineering flourished somewhere in the ancient world. And we have found exactly one example of it. The Roman writer Cicero, writing in the 1st century BC, described seeing a device built by Archimedes that modeled the movements of the sun and moon. Archimedes died in 212 BC. Was Cicero describing an ancestor of the same technology? How many of these devices existed? How many were built, used, traded, copied, and eventually lost in the centuries between Archimedes and Antikythera? We will never know, because not one other example has ever been found. What happened to this knowledge? The answer is not mysterious. It is simply devastating. The fall of the Roman Empire disrupted the trade networks that connected ancient centers of learning. The great workshops of Rhodes, Alexandria, and Pergamon, where this kind of precision craft was practiced, were destroyed, abandoned, or simply fell silent as the economic systems that sustained them collapsed. Knowledge that existed only in the hands of craftsmen, in the muscle memory of metalworkers who had learned from their fathers, who had learned from their fathers, simply stopped being transmitted. Not burned, not banned, not suppressed by any conspiracy, just not passed on. One generation of masters who died without apprentices, one workshop that closed and never reopened, and 14 centuries of human history had to slowly, painfully rediscover what those hands already knew. The first mechanical clock appeared in Europe in the 1300s. The differential gear, already present in the Antikythera mechanism, was reinvented in the 1600s. 1,400 years. To get back to where they already were. In 2022, A team from University College London published the most complete reconstruction of the mechanism ever attempted. Using every fragment, every inscription, every gear tooth and pinhole identified by a century of research, they built a working model. When they turned the crank, the planets moved. The moon showed its phase. The eclipse predictor advanced. 2,000 years of silence, and the machine still worked. Exactly as its maker intended. The Antikythera Mechanism now sits in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Tourists walk past it every day. Most of them do not stop. They don't know they are standing in front of the single most important object ever recovered from the ancient world. A machine that does not just tell us what the ancient Greeks knew. It tells us something about intelligence itself. That it has always been this. That the distance between us and the people who built this mechanism is not intelligence, is not capability, is not imagination. The distance is only time, and the catastrophic randomness of what survives it. 2,000 years ago, on a workshop bench somewhere in the ancient Mediterranean, a human being sat down with bronze and tools and knowledge and patience and built something that the rest of humanity would not be able to build again for 14 centuries. That person had a name. They had a teacher. They had students. They had a life, full of the same complexity, the same ambition, the same desire to understand the cosmos that drives science today. We will never know that name. We will never read their notes. We will never find their workshop. All we have is a corroded lump of bronze pulled from the bottom of the sea by a sponge diver who almost didn't notice it. And it is enough, just barely enough, to know that what we call the ancient world was never as simple as we needed it to be. History does not lose its greatest minds by accident. It loses them through silence, through fire, through the slow erosion of everything that was never written down. The Antikythera Mechanism survived because it sank, because the sea was colder and darker and more patient than the world above. Think about what was lost that didn't sink. Think about what burned, what crumbled, what was never found because no one knew to look. And then tell me with confidence that you know how this story began. This has been the Hidden History Vault. The vault is never truly empty.